Government's Board of Directors into session. Can we have a roll call?
Director Jim Brown.
Here.
Director Mike Carter.
Here.
Director Greta Clowney. Is Director Greta Clowney on? No? Okay. Director Scott Ignacio? No? Director Tess Albin Smith?
Here.
Director John Haschek? No? Tasha Ostrand?
Here.
And Chair Dan Jurdy?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to convene as the Regional Transportation Planning Authority, and then I see Director Haschek has just joined us.
Oh, he just joined. Okay, perfect. Hey, John.
And we're going to recess as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee of the Regional Transportation Planning Agency. First on our agenda is
or whatever.
First on our agenda is the consent calendar, adoption of resolution making findings for our remote meetings under COVID, and approval of the November 7th minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So I will move to approve the consent.
Second, Haschek.
Okay, thanks for the motion in a second. And I see that Director Ignacio is here as well. So we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Do we have any comments on the consent calendar or in front of us?
And we did not receive public comment prior to the meeting either.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can we have a roll call on the consent calendar?
Director Jim Brown.
Yes.
Okay. Director Mike Carter.
Yes.
Director Tess Albin Smith.
Yes.
Oops, I'm sorry. And Director Scott Ignacio. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Director John Haschek.
Yes.
Tasha Ostrand.
Yes.
And Chair Dan Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on items not on today's agenda? Okay. From the South Coast, Mr. Spack.
Thank you, Chair Jurdy and Director Barrett, fellow council members and council staff. Just a few words of thanks mostly. I really do appreciate your support, tenacious and constant support of the Wallala Downtown Streetscape Master Plan over the years. It has been a bumpy road. I'm excited about the prospect of a big milestone moment on Wednesday at the California Transportation Commission, and we could not have gotten to this point without your help. So thank you very, very much. I also wanted to express my appreciation for your making opportunities for me to have meaningful interaction with the ATP Regional Transportation Plan update this past year. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and I look forward to doing so in the coming months and years. Best regards and wishes for happy, healthy, and safe holidays.
Okay, well, thanks for your citizens' engagement. Do we have any other public comments on non-agenda items? Okay, not seeing any. We're on to the regular calendar, which is discussion and direction on the draft 2023 board calendar.
I think before we do that, we've got an item to recognize our departing board member.
Okay.
So
shall we share a screen on that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Should have that open. Here we go. We did prepare a little certificate. Let's see if I can get this for you to see it. All right. Is that appearing all right?
Yes. Yep. Looks
Okay.
good.
Right. So we did prepare this as we like to do. We have a departing member, and we'll miss Director Brown. Would you like me to read that?
Yes, please.
Okay. On behalf of MCOG, we recognize and appreciate your dedicated service during your term of office on the board of directors as an elected representative of the city of Ukiah from January 2019 through December 2022. Special recognition is made of your service on the Transit Productivity Committee. We value your focused attention, decisive actions, and support of regional transportation planning, funding, and project development throughout Mendocino County. Thank you.
Yes. So thank you so much, Director Brown. I know I speak for our whole staff when I say how much you will be missed, and we've really appreciated all of the work and thought that you've put into the decisions that have come before MCOG while you've been on the board. In particular, the whole senior center formula issue, that was a big issue that we worked through, and you were instrumental on the TPC in getting through that, and I really appreciate that. So thank you, and you will be missed.
Yeah, and Jim also, I think you've provided a certain level of credibility, obviously a high level of credibility for the city of Ukiah and on the council, and I think that was evidence in the passage of your street sales tax in Ukiah. That people trust the city of Ukiah with that money, and anybody who's driven the streets of Ukiah recently, last couple of years, have really seen the fruits of that street sales tax. So, I mean, I think you got a long-lasting legacy there.
Yeah, well, thank you for the recognition, and it's been an honor. It's been really kind of fun too, working with everybody, the MCOG staff, and also the elected and the Caltrans people. So again, thanks for the recognition, and I'm sure I'll be running into, especially you Ukiah folks around town, and maybe when I get over on the coast, I'll run into some of my friends down there. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And we'll get that certificate signed off and delivered to you, so you'll have a copy of that.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess that takes us now to the calendar for 2023.
Yeah, so Janet, you want to start this discussion and we can all kind of chime in?
Sure, it's been a little complicated. We've had to kind of study up on this here, but it's clear that we've got to make a change. We can't continue to have exclusively Zoom meetings because of state law changing. Well, the main thing is we've been going on Assembly Bill 361 to make findings every month, to have these meetings. And with the state of emergency expiring, I believe it's at the end of February. Yes, I say so right here in my staff report. We won't be able to make those same findings. And so February would be our last time to meet in this manner that we've been doing. And so we've laid out some options for going back to some kind of in-person or hybrid format. So the bills or the methods we were looking at are the traditional or original Brown Act, and the other is Assembly Bill 2449. Now, I'm sure most of you have been going over this in your own councils and have some familiarity with these options, and that's something we can discuss here today. But it's what we're anticipating is we'll probably need to go back into the board supervisors chambers, and they have good kind of a good tech setup to be able to do hybrid meetings, and there might be some form of call-ins that we want to provide for. So We've done some comparison with the original Brown Act versus the Assembly Bill 2449. And it looks like there are a lot more kind of constraints on the Assembly Bill 2449 than there are in the original Brown Act. So we can talk about those. It looks like we probably need to have pretty much the same procedures for our standing committees, but we're not 100% clear on that. They're advisory, but yet they are standing committees in our bylaws. We have 4 of those. Some have board members, some do not. So that might be something we need a little legal advice on. And we can maybe have a discussion of what your agencies are doing. And we think that staff may need some flexibility to decide from month to month what the conditions are, just as things come up during the year, to have some room to move to select the right procedures. So that's kind of where we are right now. I think the main limitations, and the other staff can speak to this, with 2449 is it requires having a quorum together in person in one location. And you can only have remote voting members calling in under certain circumstances only a couple times a year. So there's just not a lot of room to move there. It doesn't seem like we'd be able to have remote call-ins on a regular basis without law. So the traditional Brown Act goes back to the way we used to do teleconferencing. You know, we had Caltrans calling in from Eureka. You must post each location on the agenda notice, and you must allow the public to join at any of those locations. So those are some of the highlights of those, the differences between those 2 methods. Any questions, or would Nephili or Loretta like to chime in with some of the finer points?
Sure, I'll be happy to add, but at first it looks like Director Alvin Smith has her hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, just a comment. The first thing is so perplexing that the state of California is advocating climate mitigation, climate change mitigation. And, you know, we're all supposed to go to hybrid cars or all electric cars, et cetera. And yet they require us to go these huge distances for meetings. That to me doesn't make any sense at all. But the other thing is that I think all of us have the option, if we want to use our city halls, meeting rooms or whatever to attend these meetings, and we can post those. I'd like to see that, more of that, rather than having to go up to Ukiah. I know in the past I had gone up to Ukiah and we had a 10-minute meeting. That's an awful lot of distance and time on my part. Plus, you know, I have to get paid back for the gas and all that. So silly to me. So unless it is something I really need to meet with people, I would, I would recommend that each of us think about whether we want to go to our own city halls and use those as our meeting places. Not home necessarily, but there.
Right. And so that that's kind of exactly the sort of input that we were hoping to get from board members. So I think most of you will remember that, and as Janet mentioned, pre-pandemic, we always, or not always, but typically had a teleconference noticed on our agendas for Caltrans to participate. So we could essentially do an expanded version of that, where we would have satellite locations as long as they are open to the public and noticed on the agenda. So we were hoping to get feedback from board members to see who would prefer, who wants to meet physically in person, who prefers having sort of those satellite locations, ideally at, you know, a city hall public type location. The one issue is that if we have multiple satellite locations for participation, it does likely preclude someone from participating under the provisions of AB 2449, because with 2449, you do have to have a quorum physically present all in one location to allow that one member to participate in an remote location on an emergency basis. So that's kind of the one drawback. So, but it would be like it was before. If someone wasn't able to attend a meeting, they just missed that meeting. So those are kind of the things that we were thinking about. So Director Haschak, you.
Yeah, so if we did do, open up city halls and for the meetings as remote sites, then we could only do that for board members twice per year. Is that correct?
No, actually under the original Brown Act, you can have, as long as it's noticed and publicly available, you can do it at every meeting.
Oh, so it could work as kind of every meeting a person could attend from a published remote site.
Yes, as long as
Okay.
that, yeah, it has to be noticed. And if the public wanted to participate at that site, they have to be able to do that also. For our TAC meetings, we used to almost every meeting. We would have a standard location at Point Arena City Hall so that the City of Point Arena staff that sits on the TAC didn't have to make that drive. So that's just an example of that we used to do at every meeting.
Yeah, question, is it either or? Is it either we have the, let's say, 4 or 5 identified locations on the chart, or everybody meets in one location, except that each board member up to 2 per meeting can meet twice a year somewhere else? Or is it, or can you have multiple locations and yet still up to once or twice a year, you could have one person who's not at any of those locations and calling in from a hotel room or something somewhere out of state?
Well, so it is not either or. The issue is that if we have multiple satellite locations, so we've got a Fort Bragg, a Point Arena, Ukiah, Willits, it is unlikely that we would end up with a quorum physically present in one location. And that is a requirement of participating for emergency or just cause under AB 2449.
Got it.
So
Okay.
without that quorum in one location, physically in one location, it wouldn't allow for that.
Okay. So Director Carter?
So if you have the 2 supervisors, the representative from Ukiah and myself, there at the supervisor's boardroom, that would meet the requirements.
4 of the 7, it sounds like, would need to be.
Okay.
That would be 4 of
We
the
have to have
7.
4.
Well, and I would also be attending in person in Ukiah.
Okay, so that's good to know. I mean, and not all board members may want a satellite location.
For myself, I think it depends month to month, of which there's no way to know ahead of time. I mean, there might be days where it's much easier to be from Fort Bragg. There might be other days where it's easier for me to be in Ukiah because there might be a board of supervisors meeting the next day in Ukiah. It's hard to say. So if we could have a Fort Bragg, Ukiah, Point Arena, maybe Willits location, then that sounds like it meets the needs of most people.
And a Eureka location.
Okay.
Bahamas here.
Oh,
Just to add on to what Dan was saying, yes, it would be nice to have this as an option. And please remember, this is a guideline. It's a guideline, not a statute necessarily. So there may be circumstances that come up that force us to meet like we are now. They just want to put a clamp down. And I believe if you read in the 2449, it says, if you exceed the 2, you're going to have to, basically provide an explanation. The 2 remote per person, you have to provide an explanation and look at reevaluating the ability of that member to participate. Thank you.
and we've also heard that there is likely some future legislation coming that may change this again. So we don't know how long we'll be playing by this set of rules, but for now, this is what we've got.
If I can just again add, follow up on what Tess was saying too. it's a distance we have to travel. And it does seem, ridiculous if California is going to lead the way on clean air transportation or carbon reduced transportation, that this doesn't seem right. But it comes down to the foundation of the individuals, the citizens that have the right to see their representatives in a live forum is what's justifying all of this. And I know we all support that, but we've also come quite accustomed and actually quite efficient meeting this way. And I appreciate this forum and this ability to do that. Thank you.
Director Hashak?
Yeah, I went to the CSAC conference the other week, and certainly there was talk and interest and motivation to provide some changes to the state statutes, and, lobby for changes to this to make it more like what we're talking about, where you don't have to drive 3 hours to a meeting. So I think that changes will happen.
Yes, that's a good point. I meant to mention that. One thing that comes to mind for me is the public participation, because it seems like we've seen a lot more public members joining our meetings when we've been on Zoom. And I guess under the old Brown Act, they actually have to show up somewhere. They would have to come to one of the posted locations rather than just calling from home. That's what it appears to say. Or
Yeah,
it
we've got to
doesn't
do a
really
little more
address it.
research. I think
Yeah,
they may be able, the Brown Act dictates where
Yeah.
the elected officials can be, but we think there's greater flexibility with where the public can participate from.
Right, it doesn't seem that definitive, so we kind of need to find out. So.
Director Alden-Smith?
Thank you. It seems to me that COVID is coming back because it's winter. And I know the schools are really hurting, and I'm sure other businesses are hurting for members. I know the city of Fort Bragg, it seems like they're always closing down because they don't have enough staff. So I'm anticipating that the date of end of February may change. If that happens, what is the plan for us?
So I would say if that happens, then we're still, one of the big requirements under AB 361, which is what we're currently using, is that there has to be a state of emergency. So if we're still under a state of emergency, it's essentially the same as it is right now, because I believe that AB 361 goes through the end of 2023. So anytime between now and the end of 2023, when there's a state of emergency, we can do a fully remote meeting.
Okay. Does MCOG staff feel like it got enough direction from the board?
I think we do. I'll ask Janet, if she thinks we've got, and of course, we think that if there's additional need for discussion, we can have that at the February meeting also. Most likely following that February meeting, we'll check in with board members prior to, when we're putting together the agenda to confirm what remote locations we need to include. But we can have further discussion if needed in February.
Right, we'll have another chance to discuss this. What we're preparing for is to get a training in the board chambers. They made some changes down there. And so we need to learn the protocols there. So we'll be ready to use the board chambers as needed. And assuming that the board members who want to call in remotely would arrange with their city hall or public place, probably prefer that over, hosting at your own home, say. So that's kind of what we're anticipating and being prepared for. So we can finalize all that when we meet in early February.
Okay. Director Ignacio?
I was going to offer a motion to adopt the 2023 MCOG board meeting calendar subject to later amendment.
Okay.
I'll second. Ask check.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Do we have any public
I didn't
comment?
really get into any detail on that, but as noted, it can be amended.
Do we have any public comment on the motion? Not seeing any. Can we have oh, David?
Thank you. Dave Schbach from Wallala. The pandemic has been certainly a Faustian time, but the ability to connect to meetings like this via Zoom has been tremendously helpful and convenient. But I acknowledge that we're coming back to something more normal, which means the need to provide access to the public at large and in venues as previously done. Director Ignacio, if you end up having a regularly noticed meeting in Point Arena, I will join you there. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
You bet.
And I presume it probably most likely would be at Point Arena City Hall.
Typically, yes, unless there's other circumstances, which we'd be happy to post otherwise.
Okay, so we've got a motion. Can we have roll call?
Director Jim Brown,
Yes.
Director Mike Carter,
Yes.
Director Scott Ignacio,
Yes.
Director Tess Alban Smith,
Yes,
Director John Hashek,
Yes,
Tess Oshran,
Yes.
and Chair Dan Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that should take us over to the Covelo 162 multipath trail.
Yes, so as you all know, we've been working on this project for a long time. I reported at our last meeting that we had the bid opening coming up on November 29th. So that was last Tuesday. Unfortunately, at that bid opening, we did have several bidders, but all bids came in significantly above the engineer's estimate and available funding. So we had previously received authorization from the MCOG board to award contracts for construction and construction support as long as they were within available funding. Since those are now going to significantly exceed available funding, we have not moved forward with award, although we have published an intent to award to the lowest apparent bidder, lowest responsible bidder, pending approval of additional funding. So what we are asking for today, since we had said we would come back if bids exceeded funding, is the authorization to award contracts as soon as additional funding is approved. The funding exceeds, I thought if things were a little bit over, we could maybe ask the board to approve additional STVG funding, but they significantly do exceed funding. So we're working with Caltrans. It is our understanding that there is some additional complete streets funding that's been made available to District 1. And so we are very hopeful that we'll be able to tap into that. They're wanting to use it on existing projects, which obviously works well in our favor. And they have to use it pretty quickly. So this is an ideal project for that purpose. So the one thing is we don't know if it requires CTC approval. If it does, that means a January, I believe, 24th, 25th CTC meeting. So we should know, we should at least know a staff recommendation prior to that. We know that District 1 is supportive of using that funding to augment this project, augment the project funding. However, because that January CTC meeting falls in between an MCOG board meeting, we would like to be able to award a contract as soon as the funding is approved and not have to wait for the February board meeting. So that's what's before you today, is just that authorization to award contracts for construction and construction support as soon as sufficient funding is approved by the state.
Okay. Do we have any comments or questions?
I got a comment, I guess. It seems kind of be bad practice to do something like this. I mean, I certainly would not want to get in the habit of doing this. Obviously, MCOG staff, I have the most trust in them of almost any organization I've worked with. But they always, if I can find additional funding. I mean, I'm just concerned about the bad practice precedent setting. I mean, because of this has been such an ongoing project, I'll support the wording, but I certainly would not want to get into a habit of conducting business like this. And actually, I won't be, so I don't have to worry that much about it. So, thank you.
Can I just ask for some clarification? What are your concerns?
Well, so you mentioned that the funding might be coming from Complete Streets. I'm really concerned that some of that funding could be, as if that's the most appropriate spending of Complete Streets money, because I know that there's other jurisdictions who could really benefit from Complete Streets money. And I'm not sure why the engineer's cost came in so much. And I know that you're limited on how much research you can do on that. Whether going out to bid would maybe resolve or maybe finding somebody who can come in within the engineer's budget. Because that's common practice, is putting things out to rebid. So just the general, I mean, they're not real solid concerns. I mean, I don't really have concerns that one organization is going to go under or anything like that. I always like to know when I vote on something more precisely of what exactly is happening. It seems a little open-ended. That's all.
So on that point, when the bids were reviewed, I don't know who all reviews it. I don't know if it's MCOG staff exclusively, is it MCOG staff with Caltrans staff, or who all looks at it? Did they consider the possibility that rebidding might bring in a lower bid, or is that thought to be unlikely at this point?
So MCOG staff, we actually had assistance. We've got County of Mendocino DOT staff consulting with us on this because it's, kind of out of our normal activities implementing a construction project. So DOT has been helping with us. We had MCOG staff and DOT staff and our resident engineer reviewed the bids. I will say that they were all, we had one that was lower, but they were all kind of within the same range. So there wasn't, it seemed pretty consistent across the board. We could reject all bids. I don't know. It's not something that we have experience with implementing construction. So I don't know if there are limitations on re-advertising. If we had to, I know that often what happens is bids are rejected and then the project is modified. Unfortunately, we don't really have the option to modify the project because it is grant funded through the Active Transportation Program, and they're pretty strict. One of the most strict grant programs as far as delivering what you have been approved for. As far as the appropriateness of the Complete Streets funding, so that is a somewhat new set aside within the State Highway Operations and Protection Program for funding bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, basically, that is on or adjacent to state highways. So I think as far as use, the project actually fits very well. There's already, in fact, Complete Streets funding on this. So CTC approved Complete Streets funding in addition to the Active Transportation Program funding for this project I guess about a year ago. So it is, I can at least address that. It is a logical use of those funds. So I think that there are concerns about rebidding as far as the time. We're under time constraints to award a project. If we were to rebid, have the same result, same results of high bids, and then be back in the same position where we're seeking additional funding, those complete streets funds could have already been awarded elsewhere at that point. So for those reasons, we're recommending moving forward. And I'll ask James if he's got anything to add.
Not really. I think what Ophelia just stated sort of hits it on the head. If we rebid it, it's going to take more time. But right now, we know how much money we need based on the low bid. With the economy the way it is, bids can come in higher than they did this time, in which case we'll be scrambling to find additional money. And like she said, the funding source we're looking at might be depleted by that point. So I agree with everything that she said.
Well, that's actually what I was kind of wondering about. And we've just lived through a pretty extended period of historic low and stable inflation. But at the moment, that's not really what we're living through right now. And so, it's quite possible people putting in bids that are, well within the margins of high inflation and probably still a nice profit. But they're probably trying to guarantee that they have a profit, not knowing for sure what inflation is going to be when they actually start to build it. So I guess my concern is that in the past, not so recent past, maybe we could have rebid it with low inflation and we could have received the same or lower bids if there was a way to change the project. I guess I'm concerned if I'm hearing that there's not really a way to change the project to make it a cheaper project. And we are experiencing high inflation right now. The time it's going to take to get new bids in, it seems like the odds are perhaps kind of high that they're going to come in higher. Director Hashak?
Well, I think a lot of my questions have been answered, and I think this is a really good discussion too, because it is, 830,000 extra or over budget is concerning. I guess one question is, with the complete streets, is that money designated for District 1 or Mendocino County? Who will feel the pinch? I guess that's kind of Jim Brown's question, if we use that money, and what's the likelihood of it getting approved?
So I can't speak to the likelihood of it getting approved. Like I said, District 1 is very supportive of this, but it is still unclear as to who makes the ultimate decision, if it's a CTC decision or just a Caltrans decision. The complete streets money, it is Caltrans money. So if it didn't go to this project, and it is District 1, if it didn't go to this project, it would be used on another Caltrans project within District 1. Most obviously, it's more than we need for this project, so it'll be used for multiple projects within District 1. I know another project that was mentioned as a possibility is a project in Humboldt County. So there's no, I think because it's new, there's no way to know what it might go to if it didn't go to this, but that's the other project that I've heard kind of thrown out as a possibility.
Yeah, it just seems like since we can't really modify the plan, and there's not many good options left, and so I guess I would, certainly the people in Covelo Round Valley want this thing built as soon as possible. So I would move the approval of the recommended action.
Is there a second?
I will second. Carter.
And Director Ignacio?
Just to provide comment on the motion when you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So to appease Jim, Director Brown, we're authorizing the ED to award and execute the contract, but it's on the state's onus to come up with a sufficient funding on this. I mean, that's what I'd like to see, is the state to be able to come up with additional programs to what's been talked about here without putting the funds that we would like to see to spread out amongst other projects in the county. So I'm in support of the motion as it's presented.
Okay, do we have any other comment on the motion? Can we have roll call?
Director Jim Brown,
Yes.
Director Mike Carter,
Yes.
Director Scott Ignacio,
Yes.
Director Tess Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Director John Haschek,
Yes.
Tasha Alvin Smith.
No, there's not two of us.
I'm sorry. I think I did this last time too. Tasha Allstrand, sorry.
Okay, yes.
And then Chair Dan Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
One of us has to change our name, obviously.
And well, thank you. I appreciate that. And hopefully at the February meeting, we will have better news to report.
All right, then we're going to recess as the Policy Advisory Committee and reconvene as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency. Do we have a motion to ratify the actions of the Policy Advisory Committee?
So moved by Ignacio.
Alvin Smith seconds.
Okay, can we have a roll call?
Director Jim Brown,
Yes.
Director Mike Carter,
Yes.
Director Scott Ignacio,
Yes.
Director Tess Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Director John Haschek,
Yes.
and Chair Dan Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we're on to reports. Caltrans District 1.
Hi, yeah, I asked Caltrans District 1 Project Manager Robert King to attend today's meeting to discuss a couple of projects on the coast.
Hi all, I'm Robert King. I think I only know a couple of you. So yeah, I handle a lot of the projects on the coast for District 1. One of the projects that we've been working on for a while is, we refer to it as 010B220. It is the Fort Bragg ADA project. This is essentially working on replacing or updating existing curb ramps to current ADA standards. Also reconstructing existing sidewalk to bring it up to ADA standards, as well as additional sidewalk. There's additional work goes into that, but essentially it's not a lot of grading work. It's mostly just basically replacing what's there. We had some issues over the time with getting our CDP approved and getting it submitted in a timely fashion. We've been a little bit delayed. Last week we submitted for a CDP, and the planning commissioners requested a 2-week extension to continue looking at the project. So we are scheduled to go before the planning commission on December 14th. I will be coming to Fort Bragg that day, and we're going to hold an informational workshop like an hour before the meeting so that the public can meet and talk about what's going on. And I can talk more with the commissioners, and I also understand that the City of Fort Bragg staff is going to do a walk of the project to go over any details that the commissioners might have so that they can bring those questions back to me. I did see an email from one of my coworkers that they might be requesting us to come this week. There's an FYI, I live almost in Marysville, so. But I did used to live in Fort Bragg for 3 years, so I'm familiar with the area. I don't know if you guys had any questions on that particular one, but
I do.
Yeah, Director Alvin Smith.
So who was going to do on this walkout? Is it a committee or like the Public Works or city staff?
I believe it's 3 of the planning commissioners. I don't have their
Oh,
I don't have their names, but there's 3 planning commissioners who we submitted this last year and we had some issues and we had to pull it back. And so we resubmitted it. We submitted like a year ago. And so we pulled it back and resubmitted it. So I guess there's some new planning commissioners who hadn't actually seen the project before. And of course, we submitted it right there around Thanksgiving, and everyone kind of pinched for time. So people didn't really get an opportunity to look at it with, everyone being off. And I think City of Fort Bragg might have had a COVID outbreak too. So that inside the city staff was very limited too. So
Yes. I just wanted to say that as far as I know, the Planning Commission has postponed a decision on this until December 14. So I guess I do want to see, I don't know if you can do this or not, but they're extending the decision to December 14. After that, there'll be at least one new planning commissioner assigned in January. So I'm not sure what to say about that.
yeah, that was mentioned. I think someone had asked for a longer extension, and then I'm bad with names. The chair mentioned that, there might be new commissioners in January. Do we want to postpone it that long? And so everyone agreed to postpone just till the 14th.
So you'll be able to get out there with them, or someone will?
I was not planning to be out there this week, but if they need me, I can make myself available. I do have construction staff that I know well that is located in Fort Bragg, and I'm pretty sure they could walk the site and explain. Well, actually, the construction staff can probably explain the project better than the design staff. They can show them how the project's going to be built, and what type of traffic impacts there's going to be, and how they're going to get pedestrians through into the different businesses and things like that. I mean, from an engineering standpoint, it's a pretty straightforward project. We're just meeting ADA standards. Really, I think what the issue is how is it going to impact the businesses? How is it going to impact the local traffic? How are we going to make sure that the businesses, people can still get access to the businesses? And for those of you who are maybe more familiar with Caltrans projects, one of the things we have is we require the contractor to kind of come up with what's called a communication plan, and it's basically going to detail how he's going to communicate with the city, how he's going to communicate with local businesses, what's his schedule going to be, how much notice is going to be given. All those things have to be approved by us as well as by the city, and so that's all things we'll take care of at the pre-construction meeting. And most of our contractors we work with, they work with Caltrans. They know this is a requirement. They can't just come in, shut down a sidewalk, and not provide access to businesses. So, and there'll be like what we call a pedestrian access plan. So there'll be a lot of documents that have to be plans that have to be developed and approved before they can even start breaking ground. And so those are all things that'll get handled by the construction staff. And I say those, I'm a project manager who actually came from construction. So I worked in construction for 7 years. I know the difficulty that the staff has in implementing all these policies and plans. And I know people think, oh, it's great that you can say that, but our staff over there, they're pretty conscientious. And I know most of the guys there personally, so. Yeah.
So Robert, just for clarification, so at the City of Fort Bragg Planning Commission is a hearing either in December, potentially could be pushed off to January, but it's scheduled for December 14th. And if the permit's approved, then after that, Caltrans would put this out to bid. So in other words, it hasn't already been put out to bid. You don't already have those specifics confirmed with the contractor because that's the next step, right?
Well, once we get the CDP approved, there's a 10-day appeal period. Our history with our City of Fort Bragg projects and the ones south of Fort Bragg is they've always been getting appealed. I don't want to insult anybody by saying they're sort of a nuisance appeal, but some of them have been sort of that way. They're appealing to projects trying to stop us from doing, I think, work on the Albion River Bridge. But that's kind of like, that could push us out for 6 to 10 months.
So is the appeal process from the Planning Commission to the City Council or from the Planning Commission directly to the Coastal Commission?
So the initial appeal is, there's a 10-day process to appeal to the local planning commission, there's a 10-day appeal period, and anyone can submit an appeal, and then the appeal, they can determine if they want to hear it or not, if it has merit. If it does, it'll go to the city council for a review, an appeal, and a vote. And if the city council supports our permit, then there's an additional 10-day appeal period to go to the state for the coastal commission. And during that 10-day period, the only thing they can appeal is items that they've already appealed at the local level. So unfortunately, we can't say we already addressed those comments but we're gonna do our best to give a heads up to the state and just see if we can't get fast track for any additional appeals that could pop up. So there is a fast track that take 30 to 60 days. But there's a standard. Usually when they get an appeal, they kind of halt everything, and it takes about 6 months at that point. So,
Okay, David, so you and I, we could talk offline. Do you have your email address that could be circulated?
You want to just put it in the chat real quick?
Sure.
All right. Actually, I did want to reach out to you in general. When Tasha called me and mentioned your name, I said, "Oh, I want to talk to that guy."
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on this project? Was there any other projects that you wanted to talk about on the coast or anywhere else in the county?
So, and just kind of let you know, this project is part of a larger parent project that included the entire city. And the city of Fort Bragg, actually, I think they got $1.6 million worth of grant funding to do, I think, 3 curb ramps and some additional sidewalk on the west side. And we took over the design and administration of that work for them. Now, unfortunately, we couldn't include it in this project because we determined that they needed like 1 to 2 feet of right of way for the sidewalk. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with right of way, but that usually takes, it's like a 2-year process, 2.5-year process to actually acquire land for the state. It's probably not that long for the city or the county, but that's how the state does it. And then I just kind of want to bring up this one project that we have coming up. Maybe Dan, you and I could talk more about it. It's not funded yet. We're basically, we call it a programming document, a PID, and we're redoing the PID to kind of bring this up to speed. But we refer to it as the Men 1 bicycle improvements. It's on the north. It goes north from Fort Bragg. It's about a 10-mile stretch. And what we're really looking to do is to do a lot of outreach to all the local groups. I'm sure some on the line may have already heard of this project, and we're trying to maybe incorporate the McKittrick. Is it McKittrick State Park?
McCarricker.
Yeah, McCarricker. Okay, they have like a trail loop in there. We were trying to think if maybe we could incorporate that into this project. I know it's in pretty bad shape. It needs some paving work, and maybe provide additional access to it. And we're just kind of like doing a general outreach to the community to see who and how you guys think we should be doing that. That way, we try to reach as many people as we can, and we try to frame this project so we can go after like alternative funding. And part of that really is, reaching out to underserved communities and underfunded communities. And I think this is a good project for something like that.
Okay, thanks for the update. Anything else? Tasha, is there anything else from Caltrans you want to cover?
Thank you. I have nothing else.
Okay. Well, thanks, Robert and
Thanks.
Tasha.
Hey, thanks for giving me the time.
All right, then that takes us over to Mendocino Transit Authority.
Thank you. We have a request for proposals out for our short-range transit plan. The last one that was done here was back in 2012. So we're updating. And that's about it for now.
Well, the county general plan is only 30 years.
There you go.
That was adopted. So what's 10 years? Okay. All right. Then that puts us over to the Great Rabbit Trail.
Yeah, we haven't had a meeting since our last MCOG meeting, so nothing new to report. I'm glad that staff sent out the master plan presentation that we saw. So All of you should have gotten it in email. It's interesting and things are starting to amp up as far as community outreach.
Right, thanks. MCOG, we have your summary of meetings. Anything in particular you want to highlight?
Nothing to highlight, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay, not seeing any. Then we're on to admin staff.
I have one item to note, the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council, that's our SSTAC, met November 28th and had the Unmet Transit Needs Workshop. It was a little tight with the timing to get a 30-day notice out and have a public hearing in December. So we pushed that out to February. It's still plenty of time to, in the process, to take care of that. So that's when you'll see the unmet needs. So that group is a standing committee of MCOG, came up with a list of 10 needs and a couple of recommendations for generally for transportation, and that'll all be brought for the record at the public hearing in February. So that's about all I have on that, unless there are questions.
Not seeing any. Okay.
And again, we don't meet in January, so our next meeting is on February 6th.
Okay, great. Right, MCOG planning staff.
Thank you. I have a couple of reports that I'll give you briefly. The first one is on the mobility solution study. As you know, this is the project that we're working on with a consultant to study the remote rural communities of Covelo, Laytonville, Brook Trails, Hopland, and Potter Valley, looking at innovative solutions to provide some type of transit service in these hard to serve areas. This is a Caltrans grant funded project. I previously reported to you about the community meetings we held in August in each of the 5 communities. And then we had separate stakeholder meetings followed by a community survey that was very well advertised. The survey closed about the middle of November with a total of 339 responses, which we thought was a good response rate. So the consultant team is now analyzing the results. We've met with the project team last week, going over key findings, and potential solutions are beginning to emerge for each of the 5 communities. We're also finding that there's very few funding sources for new services like this beyond what MTA is currently using. There's some grants out there, such as 5310 and others, but MTA is using a lot of those grants already. But we did learn of a new program. Some of you may have heard of the Clean Mobility Options Program through CARB. It's funded with cap and trade dollars. We've been monitoring it as a potential funding sources for some of the solutions that are emerging, but the timing is challenging. The reason being, it's a 2-part process. First of all, you're required to do a needs assessment, and then if they like that, you can go on to request implementation funding. So we've had some conversations with CARB staff, and they've indicated that the outreach work that we've done so far would pretty likely satisfy their requirements for needs assessment. We just have to package it in a certain way and give them everything they need. But the timing is that they're going to be doing a call for implementation projects likely in February. Well, that's a little earlier than, we're prepared to actually apply for solutions. So what the team is looking at doing, we have a meeting to talk to the consultant in MTA tomorrow to see if there's a possibility that we can go ahead and apply for a somewhat vague project. The requirements are such that in round 1 of the application, you can just basically say, kind of, here are the range of solutions we're looking at. You don't have to provide a budget. And if you pass that, for lack of a better word, that screening, and they think your project qualifies and it is eligible, Then you go on to a second round, which wouldn't be until later. I don't know if it would be May, or I'm not sure when the second round would be, but the timing would fit better. So we just kind of want to let you know that we're looking into going ahead and in February submitting something. The consultant team, we have a range of solutions. They just haven't been refined, and we're looking into applying for something in February. I don't know how else to say it. A broad range of things, and say, this is what we're thinking. This is, we think these things are eligible, and we'll give you more information around too. So we just kind of want to let the board know that's what we're thinking about. We're going to meet with MTA to discuss the possibility tomorrow, and I'll ask Nafili if she wants to add anything, and then respond to any questions.
Sure, I'll just add that, we've gotten sort of the first phase of this project was a round of public input and community listening sessions. And I'll say it's some of the best community input, community engagement that we've had for a planning project in a long time. So we have a lot of really good community needs and preferences already identified that would inform this grant proposal. So although we're not going to have a final product, we're not going to have a final report from this study, we do have really useful information already that will, help us refine what we're requesting. And of course, the grant program itself has parameters that we have to work within. So it'll be whatever, is addressing the needs and the preferences of the community within the parameters of that grant. So it'll be, like Loretta said, it'll be somewhat vague, but well informed.
And then the whole timeline for the project is the study runs through the summer with a presentation of the final plan anticipated for the August MCOG board meeting.
Okay, thanks for the update.
Thank you. And then do you want me to go ahead and go on to my next report?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions at this point.
Okay, the second one is on the MTA Ukiah Transit Center. So this is a planning project in the current year's work program to conduct a feasibility study and a location analysis for the Transit Authority to evaluate potential locations for a new transit center in the greater Ukiah area. And we're also looking for the location to accommodate other multimodal improvements. Then MTA would use this study to pursue next steps of finding property and, property acquisition, the environmental process, and identifying funding. So this planning project is funded with local transportation funds in work element 3 of the current work program. And it's about $150,000 budget for a consultant with small amount of money for MCOG staff. And the procurement process was completed in November. We had an RFP process in September. We let those out for a while, and the proposals came in mid-October. The proposals were reviewed by MTA staff and MCOG staff, and ultimately the firm of LSC Transportation Consultants was awarded the contract, and that was executed on November 14th. So the project kickoff for this meeting is this coming Wednesday, and there will also be stakeholder meetings that same day. The consultants trying to efficiently use their time. Stakeholder meeting in the morning, in the kickoff meeting in the morning with staff, followed by stakeholder meeting, followed by some site visits to potential sites in the afternoon. So the schedule for this project is, as I just mentioned, in October, some stakeholder and some beginning workshops, and then some site analysis in February, planning charrette, local outreach in April, and then they'll be working on their final analysis, and the final project isn't due until late fall or around the draft in September, and then the final by November. So we will report regularly as this project progresses, and it's just now getting off the ground. So any questions on that?
not seeing any.
Okay. And my last report, and then I'm going to ask Janet to weigh in on this also. You have a letter in your packet where MCOG committed to work with ChargePoint. Well, we affirmed MCOG's interest in partnering with ChargePoint on their application for rural electric vehicle charging in rural California. So ChargePoint's application was successful. So our staff is now starting to work with them to plan for and conduct the public engagement process to seek community input to find out where these locations should be sited in the county, or actually a geographic scope of where they're looking at is River Valley on the northern end to Hopland on the southern end. They plan to have a fast charging hub site in Ukiah with the spoke sites, 4 spoke sites, and their level 2 slower sites. Those are going to be from River Valley to Hopland. The time frame is that we're going to be doing the outreach mainly between February 15th and March 15th with an online survey, a virtual community workshop with ChargePoint making a presentation, and then MCOG will give ChargePoint a report on the outreach that was collected by mid-April. So I think I'd like Janet to kind of fill in what I missed, but basically planning staff is helping with the outreach, and we're doing it in the work program. We have a work element for sustainability planning. So planning staff's working on that along with Janet, who is our expert on all things EV. So Janet, you want to go ahead and add what I missed?
Thank you, Loretta. That's a good summary. You know, back in March, early March, at the time these project applications, grant applications were due, we did not know what the location would be for this ChargePoint proposal. We were kind of searching around for partners, and we've worked with ChargePoint, and we did talk to other companies, but this is one that did get a grant, and at the time we agreed to help with that outreach component because they hadn't settled on where those charges would go under this this project. So lucky for us, they're Northern California project that is getting funded. They want to install those in Ukiah, so Ukiah Valley area. So that's good for our community, and it is consistent with our countywide zero emission vehicle readiness plan, because that does call for more sites in Ukiah than we have, quite a few more because of the rise in daytime population, you know, the workforce population and all of that. So there's definitely room for this, and this is the same grant program that County of Mendocino received money from as well. So Chair Dirty, that's the one where you've got a project that's will go in at county properties and serve the fleet and the public and the workforce, right? So these awards still need to be made, I believe, at the December business meeting of the California Energy Commission. But these are the staff recommendations, and the ranking and scoring showed these rose to the top. So anyway, we do get a lot of inquiries around here of you know, from the community, how to get more chargers, and how do we get these funded, and how can we get one in our town, and that kind of thing. So we're pleased to be able to report that yes, these are coming down the pike, you know, bit by bit. There are more funding opportunities coming along soon. They're competitive. We're doing our best to compete under these grant programs. So that's pretty much it. We're looking forward to doing this outreach and getting something in several sites in Ukiah Valley where the community would like to see them.
So yeah, my understanding from talking with county staff is that after they spoke with ChargePoint, they were under the impression that ChargePoint was going to co-locate at the county's 2 sites. So remember, keep in mind that the double win with the county sites is that if we have more charging stations at county buildings where county fleet is located, that county fleet can be converted to all electric and charged at nighttime. And then during the daytime, the public who often drive to county buildings during the day to go do business at the county buildings can charge at those locations. So we're both serving the public during the day and allowing for the electric conversion of the county fleet during night charging. So where those charging stations are being used close to 24 hours a day. If it's just some random spot on the side of the road, yeah, it might get used at any time during the 24-hour cycle, but it's not having that double benefit of allowing a fleet of vehicles to also convert to electricity. It's just allowing random members of the public to land there on some trip that they're having. So I think there's more benefit by co-locating these at a site where there's a fleet of vehicles that are ready to convert to electric. And so I'm hoping that before we look at pushing these out in the far regions of the Ukiah Valley, that we make sure that there aren't locations available, which I believe there are, at the county properties to allow these to, double basically the number of electric vehicles that the county can convert to. So
Right,
so I would hope that if MCOG is going to have a meeting with ChargePoint, that meeting would invite county staff, general services to be a part of that meeting to make sure that the 2 county sites that we're looking at, which is Yokeo by the co-op and the county admin center, that those 2 sites are evaluated along with any other site.
Right, and I think the county's proposal had just the level 2s, am I right? So that's the slower charge. That's, when you're parked all day long somewhere, that's when that works well. So this one will have several fast chargers.
Well, great. Wouldn't it be great
hub,
if we had some
right?
fast chargers at county buildings? Fantastic.
Yeah.
So-
Well, we've got excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we have a plan for some pretty broad outreach and pull in the stakeholders, and we're going to have a Zoom meeting, a countywide. Everybody can have input on that one. We'd like to bring it to an MCOG meeting and talk about it there. And then, just our press releases, our mass emails, the lists that we have, and go to, multipliers that have Facebook accounts, all those kinds of things. So, we want to, get broad comments, and then we'll take them back, and I guess they'll be sifted out at that point, but your point's well taken.
So can I just ask for some clarification? Yeah. So Dan, you're saying that it's your understanding that ChargePoint, in addition to the project specific, the ChargePoint installation specific to the county sites, that this one also they had indicated they would locate at county office locations?
That's what county general services staff told me, is that when they saw that they were both awarded and talked with county ChargePoint, they thought, oh, great. It sounds like ChargePoint's looking for locations. Maybe they can co-locate at the county buildings. And I thought they had a conversation with ChargePoint. They were open to locating, because I don't think ChargePoint knew where they were going to put them. They just submitted a grant application for the greater Ukiah Valley.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think they can be up to, 25 miles per hour. So, so apparently it wasn't set in stone. They still wanted to have that community outreach component, and we'll respond as best we can to that, and hope that comes out to serve a bit of must benefit.
Yeah, I'm just saying the sooner we get electric charging charging stations at county buildings, the sooner we can convert the county fleet to electric vehicles. It's kind of like the chicken or the egg. We got to get the charging stations before we can have the vehicles.
Yeah, so I don't know that I have my notes handy on the timeline, but we want to be finished with this public input in the middle of March. By April, we'll report out, and they will because there's a lot of process through siting and site agreements and all those kinds of things. So I think they're depending, if all goes well, we have supply chain problems everywhere. They'd like to get these built in 2024, I think, 2025 possibly. They have until 2026.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on that?
Not seeing.
Thanks for your support.
Do we have any director reports? Director Hashak.
Yeah, so the Caltrans has been working on the Covelo downtown beautification connectivity project. There's been several meetings, one in person on November 16th. And, they did a walkthrough of the downtown area. And I think that the beauty of it is that if they can connect it with the multi-purpose trail and create a safer community downtown and slow the traffic and provide some, sidewalk, bike path areas for that whole downtown area, I think it'll be a great thing for the community. So there's a lot of excitement around it, and I appreciate Caltrans and their efforts to get community feedback.
Okay, well, thanks for the report. Anything from CalCog? Okay, looks like we're adjourned at 2:47.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Happy holidays all.
Thanks,
Happy
Director Brown,
holidays.
for all your work. Happy